We're going to get to some good news tonight. You know, there were some wins that did happen on the local level that really changes the game. And this goes back to what I've said before, that when it comes to the local level, you have a better chance of implementing real change on the local and the state level than you do on the national level, especially if you live in a state that has ballot measures. We're going to start with Ohio, which did have a huge win, 2 huge wins. Shout out to my people in Ohio. I know some of you are in Ohio. Shout out to you guys. You had 2 huge wins the other day. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Voters in 12 states across the U.S. have cast their ballots in local and state elections with closely watched races in Kentucky, Mississippi, Virginia, and Ohio. CBS News projects that voters in Ohio have chosen to enshrine the right to abortion in the state by just over 57% to 42%.
Pause. Look at the percentage totals, you guys. In Ohio, Ohio is a red state. 57.6% said yes to protect the right for a woman to choose, and 42.4% said no. What this shows you is that, once again, when you put the policies directly in front of the voters and not rely on representatives to get these things done for you, you actually see how the constituents feel about these issues. This is a red state. And this is another thing I've said before too, because Trump didn't really want to get into the whole what kind of policy he would have in reference to a woman's right to choose in the interview that he had, a couple interviews that he had, and the town hall. But the thing is this, it has gotten to the point now where some Republicans do not disagree with the woman's right to choose. Things have changed. And that's the thing. If you look at the polls, it shows you it's not just Democrats who agree with the woman's right to choose. And some of the Democrats are against it. Some of those people are in Congress that are against it. So put it on the ballot and let the voters decide what they want to happen in their state. This is why we push ballot initiatives a lot. And we try to encourage people to localize in your area. This is why. Organize within your area. So that's one of them. But there's another one. Let's finish this one.
The issue amends the state's constitution to protect the, quote, right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including on abortion. Now, voters in Ohio also voted to legalize recreational marijuana. And in Kentucky's governor race, Democrat incumbent Andy Beshear is also projected to win re-election, defeating his Republican challenger, Daniel Cameron.
Pause. So the other win, and I have another video I'm going to go into in reference to this. Ohio just legalized recreational marijuana. Last year, it was Missouri. You see, the Midwest is starting to spread. I told you, all it takes is for one state in that region to get it done, and then it can spread like wildfire. Last year, it was Missouri. This year, it's Ohio. So think about the states that are in between Missouri and Ohio, and I wonder how that's going to go. Again, red state. Red state. This happened. Kentucky governor race. Beshear wins. The governor, Andy Beshear, won re-election 52.9% versus Daniel Cameron, who's a Republican, 47%. So something is happening in Ohio. If those of you watching live in Ohio, let me know what you think is going on. Because remember, Trump won Ohio. Obama had won Ohio at one point. At one point, Ohio was considered to be a swing state, but then it obviously became a red state. Something is happening in Ohio. Something is shifting. And so that will be interesting come 2024 presidential election. That'll be interesting. Not saying that Joe Biden can win Ohio, though. There is still the thing with him being the candidate. Not saying that he can win it, but something is happening, at least on the local level in Ohio. They're starting to vote more for these policies that the Democratic Party would favor.
Voters in Mississippi will also determine their next state governor. So let's take a closer look at the Ohio results. It was a decisive victory for the campaign to protect reproductive rights in Ohio, and it comes more than a year after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the nationwide right to have an abortion. Ohio is now the 7th U.S. state to protect abortion rights in its state constitution, following the Dobbs ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade. Ohio will now avoid the implementation of a law that would have outlawed abortions after about 6 weeks, with no exceptions for rape or incest. Now, President Biden celebrated the abortion rights win, saying, "Tonight, Americans once again voted to protect their fundamental freedoms, and democracy won. My administration will continue to protect access to reproductive health care and call on Congress to restore the protection."
Pause. I wanted to show you something here. My administration will continue to protect access to reproductive health care. The word I want you to focus on is access. Because technically, you already have access to it. It's just whether or not you can afford it. You can walk into a hospital. There's no one standing outside the hospital doors to block you from coming in and say, "Do you have insurance?" They will ask you when you get to the counter, but you can walk into the emergency room. You can walk into a clinic. So don't you have access? The question is, can you pay for it? Can you afford it? So I wanted to show you that. So what they're going to try to do, and particularly Joe Biden, they're going to try to run on a woman's right to choose to solidify Joe Biden's reelection, because there's nothing else he can really run on. You don't need to run on the infrastructure bill. Nobody's paying attention to that. Infrastructure bill doesn't put food on the table for American people. It's not putting a roof over people's heads. The homeless rate increased under Joe Biden's presidency. So these things, these wins that they're talking about with Joe Biden, that's not going to work on the American people, particularly those who are working class and those who are struggling. So I think what he's going to try to do is he's going to try to run on this issue.
Of Roe v. Wade in federal law once and for all. And for more on the Ohio result, let's go now to Karen Kassler, who is the bureau chief at the Ohio State House News Bureau. She's joining us with the very latest on this story. Very good to have you on the show again. So voters enshrining the right to an abortion in the Constitution, and this was a pretty clear result. What did you make of it?
I think what's interesting here is that this is the second election, basically, where voters have been asked about something that relates to abortion. In August, there was an amendment that was put forward that would have made it harder to pass future amendments like this one. And it was clearly targeted at this amendment coming up in November. That amendment failed, but abortion was a key part of that. And so that kind of set the stage for this amendment. And to have both of these, abortion rights and legalization of recreational marijuana, on the same ballot was quite interesting as well. We had no statewide candidates. These were the two statewide issues. And so it was interesting to see what voters did with them, and they passed them both pretty soundly.
So if we
Okay, now we're going to move on to the legalize it issue. Ohio voters approve legalization of marijuana. Check this out.
Priscilla, let's touch on another issue here. It didn't get as much attention as abortion, but in Ohio, we have the legalization of recreational marijuana, the 24th state to do that. What's the significance of that?
Look at the numbers. 57% said yes, 43% said no. Oh, and by the way, to the no's, and I don't even smoke, by the way, but to the no's, you guys are ridiculous. No one's saying you have to do it. No one's saying that you have to puff, pass. But this is just ridiculous. That's what. No, for what? What are you afraid of? What are you scared of? Let's go on.
Yeah, Joe, it's huge because this is a state that is considered conservative, red-leaning, that has voted to legalize marijuana, with 57% of voters making that choice and voting in favor of that. And again, it may be a lesson on messaging, because what the advocates for that said was that this is just like alcohol and we should regulate it and we should tax it just like alcohol. And as I was at the polls yesterday talking to folks, a lot of people seem to agree with that. Now, that's not to say that this is working everywhere. We saw last year in Oklahoma a measure like this failed, but it is going to be on the ballot in 2024 in a number of those kinds of states, Florida, Nebraska, South Dakota, among others. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out there as well. Joe.
So for those of you, if you heard those states, if you live in Florida, Nebraska, Oklahoma, that's coming your way next year for your ballot measures. So when I start the ballot measures for 2024, you'll get to see which other states are going to have that on the ballot. So just FYI. The other thing interesting too is I noticed she pointed out the fact that this is interesting because it's a red state. Newsflash, Republicans smoke too. Listen, I went to college in the South where a lot of the people were conservative and they smoke too. Okay, so let's just, this is not a Democrat thing. This is not a Republican thing, but it's an everybody thing. Everybody. Everybody. I want to get to this article here, and then I'm going to show you how this guy tries to, on Newsmax, he's really angry that the voters got what they wanted. Boy, I tell you, people are something. It says abortion right advocates win major victories in Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia. Abortion right advocates won major victories Tuesday as voters in conservative-leaning Ohio decisively passed a constitutional amendment guaranteeing access to abortion, while those in ruby red Kentucky re-elected a Democratic governor who aggressively attacked his opponent for supporting the state's near-total ban on procedure. And this is going to be the lose-lose for Republicans, by the way. The ones who are going so far to the extreme where they want to do a total ban, period, regardless of the situation, regardless of the number of weeks, those people are losing. So if you didn't hear it before, you heard it here. And if there's any other Republican candidates, I might do part of the Republican debate on Sunday. I haven't had time to watch all of it. But if there's any of them that are wanting to do like this total ban thing or whatever, that is not a winning point. I feel like some of the people that are running, they tried to be Trump 2.0. Like, let's be like Trump, but let's be like twice as hard, right? And I don't think that's going to work. So everyone pay attention to that. And then another piece here in Virginia, a battleground state where Republicans pushed a proposal to outlaw abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. Democrats were projected to take control of the state legislature after campaigning heavily on preserving access. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. And this is the thing for the Republican candidates that are going to try to run on it that way. That's not a winner. That's not a winner. Now, this gentleman is not happy that voters actually had direct democracy on Newsmax. Listen to this. He's upset the voters actually got direct democracy.
And you put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot, and a lot of young people come out and vote. It was a secret sauce for disaster in Ohio. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's why I thank goodness that most of the states in this country don't allow you to put everything on the ballot, because pure democracies are not the way to run a country.
So then you're
and you put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot, and a lot of young people come out and vote.
I don't know about you guys, but I never considered abortion to be sexy. So there's that. I think this is Santorium. Is this Santorum? Santorium? I forget how to pronounce his name. I think this is him. Santorum? Yeah. So I don't consider that to be a sexy thing. So there's that.
It was a secret sauce for disaster in Ohio. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's why I thank goodness that most of the states in this country don't allow you to put everything on the ballot, because
in other words, what he's saying is he's happy that most of the states in this country are not ballot initiative states, that they don't have ballot measures. Wait for it.
Because pure democracies are not the way to run a country.
so then you're
and
pure democracy are not ways to run a country. Did you guys hear what he just said? because the way that he wants the country to function is he want the representatives to be the ones to make all the decisions. But the representatives are supposed to represent their constituents, but they don't. He doesn't want the voters to actually have a say. Did everybody pay attention to what he just said? Dude, the marijuana thing, that's like a deal breaker, bud. That's like a deal breaker. Like some of these old school like thinkers, old school politicians, they're so stuck in their ways that they don't realize that their party and their constituents and the people around them have evolved, and they have not. They're still talking like it's 1991. They still don't realize the Bush days are gone. They just don't get it. They don't realize that more people have started to lean towards populism. They don't get this. They really don't. He doesn't want the voters to actually have a say so. Quiet part out loud. Interesting, huh? I'm gonna go to these comments here. Thank you for the super sticker, Lorez. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sparky, an Armenian refugee who survived the Armenian genocide along with her San Francisco bosses, invented rice-a-roni. No genocide, no rice-a-roni. Maybe Israel's thinking about that. Interesting. Thank you, none of your business. Abortion used as a wedge is that keeps parties in power. Yeah, it is something that both parties for a while have been able to just fall back on, right? So the Democratic Party could have codified Roe v. Wade into law decades ago, but they decided not to. A card they can pull out of their back pocket and use it when they're desperate so that they can get reelected. Thank you for the super sticker, Fenian. Amanda says, I'm from Ohio and I voted for both. I think people here are tired of being told how we have to live and losing our freedoms through legislation we don't have a say in. Ohio had its chance to speak. All right. Shout out to Amanda.